We all know about triggers, right? They're the people, places, things, substances, or circumstances that can majorly trigger our bipolar symptoms. It basically makes them worse. So how many of you out there feel like you're always putting out fires with your bipolar disorder? It's like you get one fire put out and then another one starts again and again and again, and you just end up right back in the exact same place that you started. Well, it might be time to take a different approach, like to figure out what's starting the fires in the first place instead of just scrambling to put them out all the time. Bipolar symptoms can often follow a very specific, predictable pattern. Even though we have to deal with these symptoms all the time, they aren't always the root of the problem. They're just a sign that there's a problem. And if we trace things back, the real problem is what triggered or started the symptoms in the first place. In the past, when I would get depressed or overly manic, all I could focus on was that something was seriously wrong and what can I do right now to feel better or some kind of relief in my life. I would often turn to substances for immediate relief, but in the long run, it made things so much worse. The feelings were so strong that I never could stop and ask, well, where are these feelings coming from in the first place? During a crisis, things can get so intense that it's hard not to focus on just the symptoms. All we want is for them to go away and for us to be stable again, but that's just putting out another fire and not working on preventing the fire in the first place. We're going to talk a lot about triggers on this channel, but what I want to focus on today is what's known as a master trigger, and this is such an important concept. Some of our triggers can actually compound and cause other triggers. Here's an example that happened a while back in my own life. So the season changed and winter and the holidays were here. That's usually a trigger for me. Work became a lot more stressful because of holiday sales and my hours got cut back, which was another trigger. I slept horribly for a few days in a row because of staying up worrying about work, obviously a trigger. I started consuming a lot more caffeine just to survive in the mornings, and that made my anxiety a lot more worse overall. Again, there's another trigger. And then that same week, I spent over an hour stuck in traffic just trying to make it to a really important medical appointment. That was definitely a trigger. When I got home from driving, I was so agitated from that week's events that I started to just unload negative energy on my partner, which turned into a conflict. Definitely a big trigger, fighting with our partners. Then I felt so bad about the way that I was acting that I felt like I couldn't handle work or relationships at all. This is what led me to start thinking about not wanting to live at all. The end result with all of this was just a massive mood swing that put me out of commission for a couple of weeks. My body actually shut down and I got sick also because of all of this. When I first started out on my journey, I didn't know what triggers were or what triggered me at all. My sole focus was dominated by how horrible and nasty I felt when I was symptomatic. I can't imagine how different that bad season I talked about would have been for me if I recognized the first sign right away. If I had said to myself, uh-oh, the holidays are here again, and that's usually always a master trigger for me. I need to stop right now, go to my bipolar toolbox of things that I know help, and start treating the illness before the symptoms show up. Well, if I missed the first one, maybe I could have caught it when my hours were cut or realized that something was wrong when I didn't sleep for a few days. It just didn't need to go that far. I could have even come home and said, I've had a really bad day with some strong triggers, I'm unstable right now, and I need us to work together on this so I don't lose it. My partner would have been more than happy to oblige and grateful that my bad day didn't ruin theirs too. I never had the insight to stop, trace my steps back, and learn where the whole mess started, and begin to take better self-care right away when the symptoms start. If we can treat the bipolar right when the first trigger or thought starts to affect us, then all the subsequent triggers shouldn't happen at all or not so easily. To use a simplified analogy, it's like someone with diabetes taking more and more drugs to treat the disease instead of realizing that they're consuming a pound of sugar every day. If you eliminate the sugar or the master trigger, then the symptoms or side effects are just way less. So that being said, a lot of you might be thinking, well, it's not that easy, Rob, and you know what? You're absolutely right. It takes time to first realize what your triggers are, and then to trace them back and to determine what the master trigger was, and to cultivate a sense of self-awareness where you can recognize triggers right away. I'm still working on this. Even after all the progress I've made with my journey, sometimes figuring out triggers is like asking what came first, the chicken or the egg. I still struggle with this, but it's something I'm aware of and I'm really working on it. And it's made a huge difference in my life and in my relationship especially. This whole master trigger technique could really change the lives of those of us who have bipolar disorder. It took some time, but I put together some lists of my own triggers because they're different for everyone. Mine include triggers for mania, agitation, and depression. If you're in a relationship or around people who are supportive of your illness, please get them on board with this. Sometimes the people around us can see triggers or behaviors way before we can, especially at first when we're developing our sense of self-awareness for symptoms. I'd say close than half of the important triggers on my list came from the observations of those close to me. Remember, though, that you have to be really kind and responsive to the people you ask to point these things out, or they're not going to continue to help us out of the fear that we might get mad at them. So be really gentle if you do ask for help. When the time comes and someone says, hey, I think I'm noticing a trigger, be gentle on them. Anyways, let me know what you think about this concept in the comments below, or better yet, tell me about the last time that you crashed and what you've managed to trace back as your master trigger for that situation. It might really surprise you what you come up with or discover. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video helps add another tool to your Bipolar Warrior toolbox. If you like what I'm doing with this channel to educate and advocate for bipolar disorder, you can always send that big digital thank you by liking or subscribing to the channel. I want to help as many people as I possibly can, and the more people who interact with my channel, the more YouTube's going to show these videos to others who need help. We can all make a difference here. Take care, stay well, and lots more videos to come on Polar Warriors.